almost a year since police officer PC Andrew Harper was killed as he investigated a burglary. Now his family are calling for the introduction of Andrew's Law to ensure that sentences of at least 20 years are given for those who kill a first responder.
Yeah, PC Harper's mother, Debbie Adlam, is calling for a change in the law after her son's killers were given prison terms she described as unduly lenient. We're joined now by Debbie Adlam, mother of PC Harper, who's campaigning for a change in the law that would lead to a 20-year minimum sentence for those who kill first responders, and former Metropolitan Police Chief Superintendent Dal Bau, who says the sentences given to PC Harper's killers should have been tougher. Dal Bau, will come to you in a moment, but first to you, Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's very difficult circumstances. It all feels, I'm sure, feels very, very raw to you. What was your response last week when the judge handed out those sentences? What was your feeling at that moment in time?
I think, personally speaking, the initial sentence was not so much of my issue. When I saw the reductions coming off of these sentences, it was then becoming just unbelievable how much was taken off. It just didn't make any sense to me, you know, because an early plea for something that, when you're really in a position where you've got no choice other than admit that you've done it because it's been proven to you, that's one thing. And then the age issue is a big problem for me, and this is part of the reason why we're launching Andrew's Law. And we're just blown away with the response so far.
Just remind us, what were the sentences? So we know that there was a 16-year sentence to one of them, and two received a 13-year sentence. Is that correct?
Yes, and then there was a new law that comes out, which means that they only serve 2/3, whereas it used to be half, and then on licence now it's 2/3. So it's slightly better than it might have been before April. But to me, that's not a punishment fitting the crime. My son isn't coming back because of their criminality.
And Debbie, what really struck me was, apart from the sentences, which of course you feel personally very strongly about, and that's why you're campaigning, was just the note even from the judge, and you must have seen it, that there was no remorse. I mean, I saw some of the detail of how these three were behaving during the trial, during the sentencing. Do you think that you might feel differently if they had shown some remorse? I mean, we've got a picture here of them smiling to camera. It's quite bizarre to see. Do you think if they had shown remorse, you might feel differently, Debbie?
I think I would. We've watched them laughing, joking. Because of the situation with COVID, things were laid out separately to the normal situation in a courtroom. So we were sat for quite a long time with them on a video screen opposite where we were sat, and they were joking, they were laughing, they were talking to each other, and their microphones weren't even switched on, which I don't really understand how that's appropriate. If you're in a murder trial, how the suspects don't have to sit there and be listened to, at least what they're saying and doing while we're sat listening to their hideous crimes.
Yeah, that is appalling, I think.
It's just insulting. I didn't see any remorse.
No, it's absolutely insulting. Dal, there is part of the sentencing review does have an element of, a first responder, somebody who works for the emergency services, being an aggravating factor. So does anything actually need to change? Of course, we hear Debbie's pain, and she even admits that, if they'd shown remorse, she might not feel so angry in a way about the sentencing. But the sentencing standalone as it is there something wrong with it in your view?
There is, and I think I just wanted to say that PC Andrew Harper was an extraordinary individual. The whole police family are absolutely devastated by his death, and Debbie and the family have shown extraordinary level of sort of compassion, really, for each other. And what we need to now see is what we can do to try and make a change in the law, so Andrew's death is not in vain. What you have with the sentencing guidelines is ordinarily a remission of 50%, and people may not be aware of that. So if you're sentenced to 16 years, ordinarily you would have a reduction of 50%. On this occasion, the judge actually made the comment and said that it would be 2/3, but that was the discretion of the judge. And at the moment, as Debbie has said, a more substantial sentence is appropriate. So you have the sentence, and you may think, well, okay, that's a substantial sentence, and then you take into account people who are under 21, you take into account the early guilty plea, even though that the evidence was insurmountable and you probably had no choice whatsoever, and then you have the situation where you have a remission. A reduction in the sentence. So I think all of those factors mean that the original sentence that's been given is significantly reduced at the end of the day. And you know, we're talking about for some of these suspects serving eight years, and one of them maybe serving 10. You know, that is not a fair situation when they've taken the life of quite an extraordinary individual like PC Andrew Harper.
Dal Bau, do you think the solution is to have a minimum longer sentence for first responder victims like PC Harper here? Or, I mean, you look at these murderers. I mean, it doesn't matter to them who the victim was. It could have been anybody. The callousness and the way they went about what they did. So, is the actual debate here that actually we just need stiffer sentences, or is a stronger case that only for first responders?
Well, I mean, there is a case that there should be an overall change, but I think on this occasion, I think I'm very much around supporting Debbie's view, which is around a minimum sentence for first responders. So we're asking, you know, our first responders to turn up and put their lives in danger, as PC Andrew Harper done on this case, and sadly paid the ultimate price.
Yeah, he wasn't even meant to be on shift. It was sort of 4 hours after he was meant to have clocked off. Wasn't that right, Debbie? I mean, listen, it's only been a year, and a year is not very long at all, I think, and I don't suppose you ever managed to really deal with it fully. But just tell us what life is like for you on a day-to-day basis.
I think we can go through all the emotions within a day or two. You can just be at the pits of desperation out of the blue. We get these waves of grief which come along. It's very hard to actually focus on actually getting anything done and feel positive about going forward. So this is hopefully an added benefit to putting some focus onto what we're doing now, because this is all to be done in Andrew's name, but for the benefit of others. Andrew's not lucky enough, obviously, to benefit from it, but I know for a fact the type of person he is, that this is something he would fully support. So going forward, we don't want to have these long drawn-out trials where you're having manslaughter or murder debates. You know, he put himself in harm's way for our benefit, for the general public, and that's what the blue light services do. They go out while we're sat in bed or watching TV or going out to the pub. They're out there putting themselves in harm's way, and that's why I think the blue light services and the police are at all events generally. You know, I think that's why they deserve a bit of extra protection. I think looking at a minimum of 20 years plus a starting point with no reductions for age. My issue at the moment is that if you are 19, as one of the defendants were, 18 at the time, but you can do so many things. You can sit on a jury at 18. To me, there's just no need for the reduction because he's not 21. You can do everything else. Why make that distinction because you're not 21? You can change your gender, you can get a mortgage. It doesn't make sense.
Well, Debbie, you put your case emotionally and also, you know, very forcefully just with the facts, actually. And the Attorney General has said that they've received a request to re-look at, you know, the particular case of Andrew's killers being sentenced and that whether it was unduly lenient. But I know that, you know, campaigning for Andrew's always giving you something to focus on, some structure, and we wish you and all the family all the best. Thank you for speaking to us this morning. And Dal Bau, as always, thank you for shining a light on your point of view too this morning. Thank you.